Energy and Sustainability Working Party of the 12th of December 2022. Item 1 on the agenda, apologies for absence. Go on. Do we have any apologies?
Sorry, I was just getting, it's going to, hang a second. So I was just getting the live stream started. I'm not aware of any. Councillor Lucarine is just joining us. I know that Councillor Burns hopes to join us as soon as he can get out of whatever West Suffolk meeting he's in via Teams.
Yeah. Thank you, though. Item 2, declarations of pecuniary interest and requests for dispensations. Do we have any?
There's none received.
No. Right. Item 3, minutes of the previous meeting. To confirm the minutes of the meeting held on Tuesday, the 14th of June, 2022, as a true record. Do we have a proposer? Anyone? Aaron, seconder, please. Laura, thank you. Show of hands. That's carried. Thank you. Item 4, to discuss the criteria for qualifying as a bee-friendly town. And I think Damien's going to help us on that one. Damien's head of Parks and Recreation at West Suffolk. That's your correct title, is it, Damien? I can't remember these.
Yep. It keeps changing, but now the Green Space and Heritage Manager for West Suffolk. So yeah, thank you.
Thanks very much. Yep. Colin, would you like to introduce the item? Or? Yeah.
Yes, on the subject of introductions, I've been very remiss not introduced Vicky Bright, who is our note taker for this evening. I think this is the first time she's been able to join the meeting live. So thank you, Vicky, for joining us. She's been in the shadows using YouTube in other meetings. So yes, this really came from Councillor Mason originally, that there was a request to look at biodiversity and what we were able to do in Haverhill. And I know that Councillor Mason was keen to hear from West Suffolk about what they were doing, and then talk about the potential for us qualifying as a bee-friendly community, which we can talk about later. But it may be best first if Damien talks first about what West Suffolk are doing as far as biodiversity is concerned.
Thank you. Would you be happy for me to share my screen in terms of I've got some information together, Colin, or would you just like me to run through it verbally? Yep.
You can share your screen.
Yeah. Okay. Entire screen, share. Right. Good. Okay. Can everybody see that?
Yeah.
So I'll just run through quickly what we do as parks. So as I say, with 221 public open spaces, covering 575 hectares across West Suffolk. As well as the public open space, we deal with events and activities that go on there. We manage the play areas, 98 play areas across West Suffolk, 500 items of equipment. We also manage the cemeteries as well. In terms of issues, obviously post-COVID, we've found our parks and open spaces are getting more use. That means more wear and tear, age on the infrastructure, etc. We've got a lot of development going on in the area, including Haverhill. So there's more development, more public open space coming on stream. And as I say, we're also involved in managing that conflicts that go on in any public open space up and down the country. Dog ownership versus non-dog ownership, events versus those who don't want events going on in their area. So that's the park side. In terms of the grounds maintenance side, we manage an awful lot of amenity grass. We cut about 333, the equivalent of 333 football pitches each week during the grass cutting season. We've got nearly 90 miles of hedge that we cut each year, and just thousands of shrub beds dotted around the district. Grounds maintenance are also tasked with a certain amount of commercial income. We maintain the highway verges. We undertake grounds maintenance for 19 parishes within West Suffolk. The issues for the grounds maintenance are that more developments are resulting in more public open space, as I've said earlier, environmental concerns around herbicide use, conflicts, trying to strike the balance between the neat and tidy and the eco-friendly. Climate change, we're finding that we're, for example, this year we were grass cutting right through until November. As I say, also a lot of these new developments are bringing on board additional SUDs, which are the sustainable urban development drainage schemes. So a lot more balancing ponds to maintain. And the other point is that we're not the only owners and maintainers of public open space. There's a lot of housing associations and others who are also responsible for that in any town. So just looking at Haverhill specifically, so some of the green success stories, I think, are East Town Park, a Green Flag Award winning site. It's a receptor for reptiles. In recent years, we've created new ponds, planted hedges, and we manage the meadows there in a sustainable way that favours wildflowers. Railway Walk, significant green corridor east-west throughout Haverhill. Castle playing fields, a large area which now contains the 3 types of orchid found in this country: the bee, the pyramidal, and the common spotted. Hales Barn, I would say, is an excellent example of managing sites for both biodiversity and recreation, where we've got large areas of grass that's specifically managed for wildlife and biodiversity. Chimswell Road, the wide verges, again, we've relaxed some of the cutting regimes in those areas. Others, obviously, we have areas of great cow, the crested cow wheat, which is a protected species and is now very rare in the UK and can only be found in the confines of East Anglia. Emperor's Green, we did some tree planting there about 5-6 years ago. That's establishing well. We've also established long grass areas there, and we've been managing that for a colony of bee orchids. Millfields Way, it's a county designated nature reserve, and that too is a receptor site for reptiles. We have some fantastic volunteers in Haverhill, the Keep Haverhill Tidy group, who are litter picking nearly every week throughout the year. East Town Park Friends. In terms of the bedding schemes that you see in Haverhill, well, we now purchase bee-friendly, non-sterile hybrid plants. Looking to the future, as of April, we're gearing up to cease using glyphosate for routine weed control. We welcome communities putting forward suggestions for specific areas where we can alter our grass cutting regimes to favour biodiversity. The term urban rewilding is a bit of an oxymoron as far as I'm concerned. They are managed sites, but we're managing them in a way that will increase biodiversity, and that's what we mean by that. There's also an opinion out there that cutting grass, we're just doing it to save money. Well, actually, if we do it properly and we're collecting arisings, then that's no cheaper than mowing at 2 or 3 week intervals. We are looking at changing frequencies of mowing where we can. but we have to consider the machinery that we've got to do that. I've inherited a lot of cylinder mowers. We're slowly changing over to more rotary mowers that will take a higher cut. And there's also an element of staff training in that new machinery. For the good of biodiversity, we need to promote indigenous wild species, which would naturally thrive in this area. You know, there have been a number of campaigns of, oh yeah, you know, we'll give you wild seed and you just go and, you know, disperse it wherever you think. And very often that wild seed isn't particularly suitable for the local environment and therefore doesn't do particularly well. So we have been working with a local seed provider, and they will blend seed specifically for our area. One of the biggest challenges that we have in all of what we do is really trying to manage people's expectations. Very often it is that conflict between those who want areas, you know, neat and tidy and mown frequently, and those that don't. I have been doing just a bit of research before the meeting on the 9 fundamental requirements for the Bee Friendly Town campaign. And, you know, I think in terms of Haverhill Town Council, I think, you know, you would meet nearly all of those apart from possibly the Bee Friendly Station. And as I say, I was a little concerned about the scattering of wild seeds along the pavement cracks, etc., because, you know, they will be treated by the highways authorities. So again, I think energy could be better spent on other activities than that particular element. But there are clearly areas that could be improved throughout the town. That there's no doubt of that. Yep. So I'll stop sharing. That was basically what I was going to say this evening, and then I'm happy to answer questions and help in any way that I can.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation, David. That was really helpful. Has anyone got any questions? Laura with a hand up, yeah.
I didn't actually have my hand up. Sorry, I was just moving the hand.
Okay.
It wasn't up.
I was expecting one, sorry. Yeah.
Councillor Mason has his hand up.
Oh, sorry, Joe, I missed you there. Yeah, Joe. You muted, Joe.
Okay. Thanks, Damien, for the presentation. I really appreciate it, and I really appreciate you coming down today to this particular meeting, to attending this meeting. Yeah. For me, one of the things I'm really keen to do is celebrate the work that you do, and part of the task is actually to get information out there so that people can see that actually West Suffolk Council does care about biodiversity. It is doing things. And as a town council, we have this committee here, which actually I'm not a full member, but it came from the community who had approached me. And it was about what can we do to do more. And part of that is finding out what we do already, and then trying to find opportunities for even more, and then celebrate it. Because I mean, this town council has committed to recognising that there's a climate crisis. In its environmental policy, it's committed to not using harmful pesticides and herbicides. So already the town council is going a long way to wanting to try and set the conditions for, let's say, a bee-friendly town. And I think for me, it's about trying to link in different ideas. We can get schools involved, we can get the community involved. But one of the things that you talked about, which was people not necessarily understanding what they're looking at. And one of the things I would be wanting to propose to the town council is that we had some signage which had some information about what is going on in this particular area, to make it interactive, to make it educational, to make it informative, so that people can actually take their time and understand, oh right, okay, this is part of Haverhill's biodiversity programme, because I didn't know, of course, everything that you're doing, and it's about how do we access that information, because if we want more people to care about the environment, we have to engage them with the environment. They need to have that information and be involved. And so for me, I did send you an email. It was probably inappropriate, but there were some suggested sites around town, and it's not for me to necessarily suggest those. I mean, it could be the council, or we could invite people to identify areas. Of course, West Suffolk are only going to really focus on West Suffolk land. But one of the things I'm really quite passionate about at District is trying to see if we can get West Suffolk to interact even more with parish councils already than you're already doing, to see where there are those more opportunities to celebrate and increase biodiversity. Because for me, the stopping the use of glyphosate and pesticides is one thing, which helps protect biodiversity and helps pollinators. But the other side is, of course, where are those opportunities that we can, around our town, but we can do more. And so really, that's why I brought forward the motion at the town council to invite you to come along so that we can find that. But for me, the next step is, how do we go to the next step and celebrate? If it's a funding issue, maybe I can use some county councillor funding, or we can use some other funding from elsewhere maybe. But I'm really quite keen that we find ways in which the community can engage with what's happening around them in a really positive way. I'll stop talking there.
Yeah, thanks Joe. Would anyone else like to speak?
Chair, if it's useful, one of the things we want to talk about was the bee-friendly town.
Yeah.
And I wonder if I ran through the criteria for being a bee-friendly town, if Damien had any thoughts on where West Suffolk might already be doing some of this work, given his very useful presentation.
Yeah, that'd be ideal. If you could do that, please, Colin.
Okay, so the list, it looks on their website as if the list is kind of compulsory, but it's kind of, having talked to them, it seems to be a little bit more of a kind of a general kind of list of the sort of things that towns should do. So it's not necessarily identical to their list, but shall we say kind of equivalent to their list. So and I don't suppose there's any particular order to it, but they've said the first thing for bee-friendly towns is they want to see examples of a town that's planted up patches of land, such as roundabouts, with bee-friendly plants. I don't know, is the District Council responsible for the sponsorship programme for roundabouts in town, or is that Suffolk Highways doing it?
I think the highways have now taken back responsibility for the roundabouts, but certainly at one stage it was West Suffolk. And yeah, I mean, we have got planting schemes on our roundabouts, but that they could be better.
Can I come in on that, Colin?
Yes. Yeah.
County Council informed me that actually parish councils have the power now to engage in planting programs on roundabouts, but they have to apply for a license to do it. But of course, you have to use contractors that are qualified for using for doing works on highways property. So we could either go down the West Suffolk route or use a separate contractor, but we would have to apply for a license. We don't using the sponsorship method isn't the only method of getting planting work done on roundabouts.
No, absolutely. Actually, we are registered with Highways, with Network Assurance, for working on the highways, and we hold the qualifications. So we can work, but you're quite right, you need a licence first and foremost. I wonder whether any patches of land where West Suffolk are planting bee-friendly plants?
Yeah, I mean, certainly we've done that in Easttown Park. So if you needed a site to evidence, that would be a good one. But as I say, there are other areas that could certainly be improved. Around the kiosk on Haverhill Rec, for example, is one area which has currently got a lot of blank beds where we could do something. It's very much in the public eye, and that would be a good one to promote and actually have some interpretation. Which would explain the benefits of the plants that we're put in there.
Yeah.
Well, that would work quite well because that's actually around the kiosk which we operate. So I think maintenance of that land actually falls to us anyway, doesn't it?
Yeah. But we could help with that one, certainly.
Yeah. I think Laura wants to come in, and then Joe.
Yeah. So do they have a specific list of specific bee-friendly flowers that we can sort of, use as a guideline, or do we just, because we already know what bees like, do you see what I mean, Colin? Is there a specific list that they actually have?
Well, I think they do have a list to help you out, but I mean, there's certainly plenty of lists out there. You can buy packets of seeds for pollinators, etc. You can buy plants for pollinators. Of course, what is nice and healthy for a pollinator may not necessarily be the sort of thing that we'd want in a public realm. So I would say that what we'd need to do is utilise Damien's and his colleagues' expertise to look at which plants are in the group that are both pollinator friendly and suitable for being planted in the public realm.
Thank you. Joe?
Yeah, and just really quickly, of course, some things are locality specific. Damien did show us a slide where, where if we can, where possible, use native species that are going to flourish in this area, then of course we should go for that. For me, when I started looking at plots of land, again, it could be quite controversial because, of course, lots of people have different ideas of what they want to see. There's a rectangle of land which is on Cleves Road. At the top of Cleves Road, as you go to Puddlebrook, it's the first field on your right. It's very large, and for me, I looked about, and the rear right-hand corner could easily be a triangle that could be a wilding project. It's not a football pitch. It's never used as a football pitch, and it's a huge area, and it wouldn't impinge upon people's use of that area as a dog walking place. And for me, I think there needs to be some sort of working party that can identify firstly what land belongs to West Suffolk and whether West Suffolk would be amenable to a project in a particular location. But also, I'd also like to come back on the idea, nobody responded to it, and so if it's a non-starter, I'm happy with that. But the idea of signage, I'd very much like to hear a comment on my idea of putting signage up that explains what is going on in this particular location, so that anybody who sees it can say, oh, this is a project, and can see it as such and then value it as such also. I just was hoping that I could get some comment back on that as well. Thank you.
To be fair, I think that's a terrific idea, and also I think what would be a good idea would be to actually engage with residents and ask them if they can identify any bits of land on their property or in their area, in their vicinity, that they would like or put forward, and then we could sift through those, see who owns them and see what the practicalities of that would be. But let's get the residents involved and not just sort of impose something on a patch of land, because we don't know that they may absolutely value it for some other reason which we don't know. So so what I'm saying is that it'd be good to get the residents involved at some stage, some publicity to say what we're doing around a bee-friendly town, and can you identify any bits of land near to where you live that you potentially like to put forward? Yeah, Laura.
I think signage is a great idea, specifically for any areas where at the moment, it's usually being sort of mowed and left as grass. And if it's left to grow, you'll get all the complaints on the sort of local Facebook group and everything from people saying, oh, the council just haven't bothered to cut it. And as Damien mentioned, cost saving and stuff. So I think, yeah, definitely, if we want to avoid people seeing it as a negative every time grass grows and kind of perpetuating that idea that it's untidy, then yeah, I think any areas that we're leaving to nature, it's a really good idea to have a sign so that people know it's a purposeful choice. My hand was actually up just to ask Damien, you said about your wildflower mix that you've got that's suitable for the local area. Is that something that you kind of have, or I don't mean you personally, but the council have available, that our town council, if we identify areas, we can sort of source that specific mix from you?
Yeah, more than happy to share our sources of where we get stuff from. Like, no problem at all. As I say, just coming back to the signage issue, I mean, signage can be expensive, and we have in recent weeks had quite a spate of vandalism where we've had to go out and clear graffiti off signs. So I think just an air of caution that if we go down, you know, and I'm all for those specific areas where we're making those changes, because I think, as you say, if we don't, we'll then receive a lot of criticism. But if we're going for signage, just making sure that it is the stuff that either is very cheap and we can just replace if it gets, you know, damaged, or alternatively has, you know, is more expensive but has the graffiti removing film and other things on it. Just bear in mind, and that's for any town. It's not just Haverhill.
Yeah. Quick one from Joe, and then back to Laura again after that. Yeah. You muted, Joe.
Councillor Stinchcombe has his hand up as well.
Oh, sorry.
You think we'd be good at that, wouldn't you? I had some residents contact me along Recreation Road, Damien, about the top of the wreck and how scruffy it looked. And then I understood that that was actually an attempt of a wilding project that hadn't quite gone to plan. And I just wondered whether you could give some feedback on that particular project and how you maybe see it going forward. Yeah. Because I'm all for it, because of course we have problems with cars parking on that particular area, and then we had a bank, but it hasn't quite come off. And I suppose there is an element of trial and error as you try these things, but I just wondered how you look to resolve that particular stretch. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're quite right. It was the embankments themselves were seeded. We then had a very hot, dry summer, and that hasn't helped. I think also the fact that they haven't been cut since hasn't helped. So, you know, if they haven't already been done, we now have the sidearm flail to be able to go in there and cut those so that at least they do look tidy at the end of the season. So I think there, you know, we can look at some reseeding next year. And as I say, the fact that it has been seeded doesn't mean that it won't be cut. And, you know, if we fail to then follow up in the maintenance thereafter, then that's something that people quite rightly should pick us up on. Because in that particular instance, you know, the expectation is that it would be cut, I think 3 or 4 times a year. So, as I say, predominantly, I think the failure there was associated with that dry summer.
So, Laura?
Yeah, just regarding the types of signs, which Damien mentioned, I have no idea about what materials would make kind of cheap or long-lasting signs, but obviously we do want to be really aware of our carbon footprint in everything we do. So my main concern, if we were going to do any signs, would be to go for whatever option is the most eco-friendly and sustainable, whether or not that's the cheaper or the more expensive. I think it's really important that we don't lose sight of that. You know, we don't want to be using loads of sort of plastics and, you know, non-recyclable materials in anything that we do. So I just, yeah, that would be my big wish for any signage.
Yeah, thanks, Laura. Alan?
Thank you, Chair. Damien, I'm wondering if you could, have you got my audio, everyone?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just wondering if you could give us an idea of the cost of your interpretation boards at East Town Park, because I remember doing some research thinking about Railway Walk, and possibly, I don't know, local nature groups wanting to put up interpretation boards there. And I realized that hardwood and, I don't know, I suppose it wouldn't, if Laura wants to avoid perspex of any sort, then we're looking at armored glass, really, aren't we? Toughened glass or something to protect the whatever display material you have. And I realized from doing a bit of quick research that we were talking about many hundreds of pounds. I have the figure of £700 in my mind, for a nice hardwood thing that would last for 50 years in a nice eco durable way. And then I was thinking, well, East Town Park have a cheaper system, don't you, where you're using softwood and it doesn't last forever, but it's arguably going to rot gracefully one of these days, and you're not, I forget what you're protecting it with, but it's obviously a cheaper and slightly more cheerful alternative. And maybe you've got even more cheap and cheerful alternatives that you could suggest with some idea of a costing. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Alan. Yeah, to be fair, on the signage side of thing, you could just, for most of these areas, just have, if we had a sort of a town logo, town bee friendly logo with just like a bee and something printed under it, a link to a website or something like that. That'd be quite cheap, and it'd be an easily identifiable sign to say that area was potentially bee friendly area. But just a thought.
Yeah, if you've got a post to attach it to.
Yeah.
It's already there. Do you know what I mean? This is a thing we found with trying to sign walks, that sometimes there is a lamppost handy that you can stick it to, but who do you ask permission to stick it to a lamppost? No doubt Damien would have words of advice to offer us there.
Well, to be fair, I think it'd be better to have an easily replaceable, lightweight, cheap sign that's basically easily replaceable, because we've seen expensive signs like we've got up at Emperor's Green. They've all been graffitied. I have reported it a few weeks ago, about his name, and it becomes a nuisance to replace or repair them, whereas if you've got something that's relatively cheap, and possibly just go around once a year and put some new little signs up or something like that. I don't know, but anyway, it's just a thought.
Chair, the other thing on the list, which Damien might have a view on, is specifically making your local railway station bee friendly. However, I have confirmed that we can use our bus station. And I don't know how much of the land around it. The land of the bus station is actually West Suffolk land, I think, because I'm pretty sure they're West Suffolk bus shelters, etc. And I assume, I don't know about the land between the bus station and Storebrook, at which point it belongs to the Environment Agency and at which point it belongs to West Suffolk, or whether West Suffolk own the banks and the Environment Agency only own the river.
Yeah, if we're permitted to use that area, then it could be argued that we've already got the Haverhill in Bloom group who are hanging the troughs on the white bridge sides as you enter either side. So we could use that. As I say, some of those verges in that area along the brook are West Suffolk's as well, and we could do something there. And from memory, I think that there's all those conifers, isn't there, that surrounds the bus station, some of which have been taken out and some of which are looking past their best. So there is possibilities there that would need a bit of funding to resolve, but it could be made more attractive and more bee friendly at the same time.
Yeah, I've had that discussion with the Haverhill in Bloom group. They're listening to that, and obviously there are some planters which West Suffolk maintain. I don't know what the thoughts are about plants actually in the high street and in well traffic places, bringing pollinators actually into those areas, whether there's any real need to do that, or whether there's actually enough areas away from highly trafficked areas that we could plant up in any case.
To be fair, there's another good area potentially between Tesco's through to Queen Street, that walkway on the left-hand side.
Pytle.
Yeah, it's been left sort of derelict. It has been brought up before, but on that left-hand side, at the back of the police station there, that.
Oh right, yeah.
There, yeah.
I'm trying to think what that's called. It's got a weird name.
I'd call it the Tesco's walkthrough.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there any other points on that list, Colin, that you think?
Well, there are other points, but they're not really ones. There's things like bee-friendly schools and colleges, a seed and bee-friendly plant exchange, pesticide-free gardening, bee-friendly pub. There's guerrilla planting of which I think is a kind of just a community get-together to plant up an area. Which I guess, there's areas around the Clements and the Chorlton and no doubt Parkway and other areas where there's very little chance of the areas being planted up any other way but by community action. And I assume, Damien, that generally speaking, subject to the normal kind of constraints that we all have to bear, if a community group wanted to get together and plant up some otherwise underutilised planters around the town, you haven't got a particular issue with that?
No. I'm sure we can work together on that. As long as we each know what we're doing, I can't see that's a problem at all.
Yeah, and that's the key thing, that we don't encourage residents or ourselves go off and plant up something that actually you're under an obligation to mow, and then everyone gets upset. But of course, they shouldn't have done the planting in the first place. So I think you're right. We need to keep a good dialogue.
Yeah, thanks, Laura.
Yeah, I may be mistaken, but I kind of thought that Alan was looking for a response from Damien when he was asking a question about the signs, and then the conversation kind of got sidetracked. So I just wanted to bring it back to that in case Alan had been after a response there.
Yeah, my apologies. Yes, in terms of price wise, signs do vary considerably. We have put in expensive ones costing, £700 up to £2,000 in some locations where the size and everything else has required it. But I think that the information that you want to portray is constantly being updated. So I think cheap and cheerful, but the ability to replace them quickly is probably a better way to go, and to use those sustainable resources if wherever we can.
I love Tony's idea of a bee logo, and it would be pretty easy to have a bee logo and have a little QR code, which then would mean we could update the information as often as we wanted if the QR code just led to a sort of website explaining the bee friendly initiative.
Yeah, as I say, we are hoping to try and roll out some more of these areas that we are allowing to, mow in a different way and to pollinate, to enable pollinators to thrive. So yeah, for our part, we will be doing the localized signage, and as I say, I'm conscious not wanting to step on the town council's toes on this. If the town council want to host the website, happy to provide information to go on that. Equally, I'm sure we could do something at our end as well. So yeah.
Great. Yeah, if you were already doing signs with a QR code or something, then it would be great. I assume it would be cheaper if we all sort of, if you just got more signs for their.
Yeah, it would. I think whatever we do, it would be cheaper to collaborate and work together on these things. And we're not we're not precious about, you know, about it. So yeah.
Thanks, Damien. Joe, you muted, Joe. Sorry.
I'm so sorry. We could involve the schools possibly in a designer logo project. You know, I threw one up there because I like playing around with graphics. But in terms of engagement, you know, the town council could invite the schools to get involved, and you know, it's a good way of sharing some of the information about what we're hoping to do.
Yeah, I think that's a terrific idea. Get the youngsters involved with designing the logo. Ask, you know, everyone in the town where they potentially could want, you know, one of these areas, and you know, do a launch for next year. Hopefully, get something going. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's about it now. Thanks very much, Damien, for taking your time to spend some time with us and go through stuff. It is really appreciated. I know how busy you are. You're more than welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, but I'm sure you've got much better things to potentially do at home. Yeah.
Thank you all. And as I say, happy to share anything. I'll catch up with Colin and just quantify what the homework, what the ask of us is. So
Okay, thank you, Damien.
Thank you, Damien.
Thank you.
Cheerio. Bye.
Right. Yeah, that's a good discussion. That. Okay. Item 5: actions from the previous meeting that weren't on the agenda. A, follow up with professionals and WSDC regarding installation of solar panels to HTC buildings, and that's I think Gary's leading on that. You muted, Gary.
Hello, can you hear me? I've had a few technical issues with it, with the line breaking up. So if I do break up, then please do tell me and I kind of slow down. So I'm hoping that everybody can hear me now. So I'm presuming that's fine.
Yep.
Cool. Okay, cool. Right. With regards the solar panels, which we've kind of ascertained would be kind of advisable to go on, not on the art centre, but onto the zone. We've ended up with 5 options, pathways we could possibly go down. I'll just run through those 5 pathways, so you'll be up to speed exactly where we currently sit. The first pathway is to stay on the contract with Corona Energy after September 23. It does what it says on the tin. It's prices that we all are aware of in the current energy crisis. It's probably not an option we'd probably want to head down that particular yellow brick road. Option number 2 is there's a scheme that is run by West Suffolk, which is called the Solar Together scheme. I did put in a kind of a cheeky little application just to see what came out the other side of the machinery. This was about a month and a half, 2 months ago now, where businesses could apply, even though I did speak to West Suffolk, and even though it was a residential scheme, they did say you could apply through the residential portal, but make it clear that you were a commercial business, which I did so. We did have returned back from a Kent company called Solar Air, a system that would go on to the zone, roughly in the price of 18/19K, including a battery. The technical details are relatively limited, which comes through. The problem with the scheme is you have to pay up front to kind of get the ball rolling. So once you've had your kind of basic quote back, you have to pay for it to move forward. So it was, like I said, it was a little bit cheeky to kind of see what would come out the other side. The technical details that I did send to our good friend Miles. He hasn't returned to me on that. So currently awaiting his opinion of that. My take on it is that the Solar Together quote that we had from Solar Air is quite similar to the one that we had from a company called East Green previously. That one was in the region of 20K, but I'm not convinced that it had a battery. Now, these options 2 and 3, Miles' messengers report back to us were the fact that some of the technology he believed wasn't really top quality kit. It was kind of, I don't want to say Poundland kit, but it wasn't kit tech that he would be installing on his system. Although he is quite upfront to say, and if we can take this as a kind of a should we say, a median cost, as Miles is saying that for a similar spec, he'd be looking at costing us a system at about 27k. So if we're looking at the Solar Together scheme coming in 18, 19, the East Green Coat 20, we need to put that into perspective with what Miles is saying, that in essence, he believes a kit, the tech that would go up would be upfront cost of about 27k if he was supplying that to a commercial user. If we then go on to pathway number 4, which is West Suffolk Solar Scheme, which is the West Suffolk's in-house scheme. I have taken that as far as I've taken it at the moment. We have run West Suffolk have run the test with the UK Power Network grid connection. That testing is complete. That's the first part of the process you have to go down. The second part of the process, if nobody is aware of this, the West Suffolk Solar Scheme is where West Suffolk installs the tech at their own cost and then charges back to the user the price of the energy. It was around about 14 pence per unit, which is obviously a very good rate. There's no upfront costs from our perspective. We merely pay them back for the energy that they're providing through the solar panels. Everything else is provided by West Suffolk. So that scheme is sitting there now because at this particular juncture, as it's not a town council building, they need to have a conversation with the landlords to make this scheme to be processed a bit further on. Number 5, the pathway, is simply to wait until September. And if I can kind of touch on that date, September, harking back to the Solar Together scheme, the deadline for that has now ended. That there will be, I've spoken to Emma at West Suffolk, there will be running it again later on this year, which segues with the autumn period where we will hopefully be entering into an energy consortium with West Suffolk through our contacts that West Suffolk provided us at the company Laser/Lumina, where we will hopefully then receive vastly preferential rates for our energy usage. Hopefully, we're currently in a contract with an agency for energy at our other sites, the Arts Centre and the Leaston, which will come to a close in September. The plan being that should we wish to, in September, we could join alongside West Suffolk into this buying consortium. Now, those are the kind of the 5 pathways where it's sitting. Obviously, you all would have an opinion on any of those. Obviously, the one with the least upfront, there is the one with the least upfront because in order to have solar energy is pathway number 4, which is the West Suffolk Solar Scheme, which is ready to go once, if the landlord approves and all the paperwork is viable, then that could go ahead. I think obviously it may be worth us just riding out and seeing where the price of energy sits in the summer and what potentially would be the price of energy units that we'd be getting through the consortium. But in terms of, shall I say, doing good, which is what we're here to do, certainly pathway 4, the West Suffolk Solar Scheme, with no upfront cost, is certainly, from my perspective, a very viable option. So those are the 5. Like I said, I haven't had anything back from Miles recently on what I've sent through to him, but that's currently where we're sitting. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much for that, Gary. First, got Laura there.
Yeah, hi, thanks a lot, Gary. That's really good to know that things are sort of moving. I think I will probably, I think the majority will probably agree that pathway number 4 just does sound the best. It sounded the best when we visited that earlier in the year. I know that when you had a few options that you sent to Miles earlier this year, he had said that he would recommend going with that one as well. And I do think it makes a lot of sense for a variety of reasons, not least the fact that there's sort of no risk cost-wise to us. The one thing I would say is that I would really prefer not to wait any longer. I mean, obviously they have to speak to the landlord, that's fine. I don't know if we can do anything to hurry that process, but we've been trying to do this for a couple of years now, and because of COVID and everything that's been going on, it's all moved really slowly. But it might have even been nearly 3 years, I think, that we've been talking about this. It feels like a really long time, and like not that much movement has happened. And I just think, you know, in all that time, look at all the fossil fuels we've burnt and the you know, the money that we could have saved. I think we should just try and push it through as quickly as possible. And thank you so much for your work, Gary.
Thank you, Laura. Alan, sorry, you nodding your head. Would you like to speak? No. Yeah, I think, personally, if I can say a few words, is well done, Gary, for looking at the options. Would you be able to put it into like a report form, a simple report form, showing the comparisons with each other? It does look, from what you said, that option 4 would be the best option, but I'd really like to look at the other options in detail and see exactly what they're offering, pros and cons, etc. And obviously, unfortunately, John isn't here, but I think he's actually engaged with his gym at some stage. I think they've got solar panels up there, so he may be able to help with the process there. Thanks for that. But I mean, if you could have it in some sort of report form, Gary, when you get time, and like Laura said, it'd be really good to try and push this forward. Get something done sooner rather than later.
Okay, well, I'll send
sorry,
out.
Colin. Yeah.
I was going to say, Chair, I was going to say, Councillor Burns is watching, but he's not actually joining the meeting. I think in terms of option 4, I think that is the option that he has on his gym. The other option, Gary, is not available now, but from when we look at renewal of our supply contract from April the 1st, Councillor Mason will be aware that the urban chain project that West Suffolk are doing goes live from April the 1st, which is where there's opportunity for West Suffolk to sell energy that they're producing directly to us, which could be even cheaper than the framework agreement they have. And I know that there is a potential, perhaps just with a small p for the time being, for parish councils to join West Suffolk as part of generating the electricity as well. Clearly, probably wouldn't work on top of the zone because it's not our building, but some of our other buildings, potentially we may be able to weave in any generation that we produce into a trading arrangement with West Suffolk.
Thanks, Laura.
Yeah, I think that's great for if and when we do have buildings that we can generate that can be part of that scheme. But I don't like the idea of for the zone of buying the energy from elsewhere, because we've got a roof there that we can be generating solar energy, and obviously what we want to be doing is actually creating more renewable energy production. So I just don't feel like that is an answer. Other councils who are who don't have any suitable roofs could buy that energy, whereas we actually have a suitable roof. So it makes much more sense to me to go with the pathway forward that involves actually having the panels rather than buying solar energy that anybody could buy, if that makes sense.
Yeah, the idea, I think, is that if we are producing energy, and don't forget option 4 is West Suffolk effectively doing the work, that an arrangement would be had so that any excess energy that we can't use or store in terms of selling to the grid, which actually is a very, very low rate nowadays in terms of what you can be paid, that there may be alternative trading arrangements with West Suffolk. It's not to say that we can't do just one. We can actually potentially do both.
Yeah, brilliant.
Thank you. So we've got a plan of action on that then, Colin, to push this forward.
So Gary's going to do the report you suggested.
Yeah.
And then hopefully in the course of doing that report, he'll also gather some more information from West Suffolk and from our landlords as far as the zone is concerned.
Yeah.
And also we may hear more about the art centre roofs as well.
Thank you. Laura?
Sorry, yeah. Have we actually put the landlord in touch with West Suffolk? Like, is that something, are those conversations happening, or do we need to do something to try and spur that into action?
Gary or Colin?
Gary, I think, would know the answer to that one.
Gary. You're muted, Gary, unfortunately.
I haven't had any discussions with the landlord. I don't know who the landlord is. I've never had any. I did touch on this with Colin previously, so I'm happy to take the conversation with the landlord if I have the details.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I thought you'd put the two together. So I thought it's what you said earlier. I can give you those details easily enough.
Yeah, that'd be a great idea.
That would be great if we could
thanks.
make sure that conversation's happening. If we could find out, who at West Suffolk needs to speak to the landlord, and then, sort of get that moving. I think that would be amazing.
Yeah, that's what idea. Thanks.
Okay, I'll do that this week.
Brilliant.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Gary. I presume this is going to be a decision for full council, Colin, or would it come back to this committee?
Well, it depends what the decision is. Option 4, of course, doesn't necessarily have anything to do with us.
No. What I'm worried about is that we may not have another meeting for 3 months or so. Obviously, we'll move things forward.
Yeah, if something comes back that we need a decision, then it'll be taken to the appropriate committee, or we can always call a meeting of this committee to discuss anything for a recommendation to go forward to full council.
Yeah, thanks for that, Colin. Right, moving on to item B on item 5, which is spraying of verges, which is down for John to speak on. Is he going to take part, or?
I don't think he's going to be able to take part in that, although there has been an announcement, I think. I don't know whether Councillor Mason wants to come in, because he seconded a motion at district, which I believe then the portfolio holder issued a statement in terms of spraying. So I'll perhaps leave that to Councillor Mason.
Yeah. Would you like to speak a little bit on that, Joe, please?
Yeah. So I was contacted by some residents talking about the cutting of grass and doing more in terms of wilding to promote pollinators. And then, of course, the conversation moved on to glyphosate, which is commonly used by local authorities, which is a highly effective weed killer. And it's quite cheap to use. For many years, it's been the go-to pesticide. Rather disturbingly, it is a pesticide that is used quite wholesale on farms to kill crops, and then they turn it back over. Worldwide, World Health Organization listed it as probably carcinogenic. There are class action lawsuits across America. Lots of councils and authorities have committed to stopping the use of glyphosate. Now, Suffolk County Council said, Cabinet announced, it's publicised, that they were going to stop using glyphosate from January 2023. And the East Suffolk Council, Mid Suffolk Council have also declared that they're going to stop using glyphosate. And so for me, based upon the representations made to me in the community, but also kind of like the common sense approach. If we are pro biodiversity, if we're looking for a biodiversity net gain, then we shouldn't be doing things that damage biodiversity. Now, of course, the big concern, and it will be a topic of debate at district, will be, well, what are all the alternatives, and are they effective? Well, the truth is there are alternatives, but they're not as good as glyphosate. And so we have to be really careful that we don't enter into a binary debate where we're discussing ethics and practicality and finances, because without doubt the cheapest, best option is using glyphosate. But the damage that it does to bee populations, and the fact that in public spaces there's a fear that it could be carcinogenic, it's like, what do we prioritize? Now, the downside, of course, and Damien has now left and Highways would say the same, one of the downturns of not using glyphosate and using other methods is that there may be a proliferation of weeds. We may start seeing more weeds in our communities. And this is where the ethics debate comes in. What do we prioritize? Less effective methods that aren't harmful, or a really effective method that could be really harmful? And so the motion that I seconded, that I'm going to be seconding tomorrow, although there is an amendment to it, because the motion doesn't ban glyphosate in all circumstances, because the Japanese knotweed, there is not an effective way of getting rid of it, but you can inject glyphosate into Japanese knotweed as an alternative way instead of spraying, which is far less harmful. But within the motion, there's a request for a register to be kept from West Suffolk, by West Suffolk, for all the areas where glyphosate is used, such as Japanese knotweed. But also we're looking to extend that motion to include other pesticides and herbicides that are harmful to pollinators. Because I don't know if you've noticed, there are far less bees, far less butterflies than there used to be. And the use of these pesticides are causing harm. So that's kind of where I am with the motion tomorrow. And it'll be an interesting debate, because of course the debate will center on what are the benefits, where are the harms, and what are we comfortable with accepting. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that, Jay. Much appreciated. Laura?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify. My head is like a sieve. So, but I think at one of our last meetings, I don't know if it was the last one or the one before, I had brought up a very similar thing. I'd brought up the spraying of pesticides, and I was told by whoever was in the meeting at the time that it only happens once a year, which hadn't been what I'd been told. And I just wondered if you know, Joe, about when, Nan, who I know you've been speaking to, who's a community member who has a lot of concerns about this, who does a lot of work to support bees, she had told me that she thought it happened every few months, I think, throughout the kind of spring, summer, autumn sort of months, or I can't remember how often she said it happened now, but she had said, you know, whenever she thought the next lot of spraying was going to be, and she wanted to try and stop that from happening. And then there was a lot of confusion then, because I was then told, oh no, it literally happens once a year. So yeah, I don't know if you can shed any light on that, Joe, about when it will next be happening, if it does.
Okay, so there's a distinction between how West Suffolk used glyphosate and how Suffolk County Council used glyphosate, or indeed how Haverhill Town Council, because although there is a statement in the environmental policy, we don't have any record as to whether the town councils still do use any pesticides or herbicides. So, I mean, I think that is potentially a question. Are we adhering to our policy that we already have? So the distinction between county and district, county is very much focused on highways. The grass open spaces that they may have are contracted out to West Suffolk Council, but the guttering and verges close to the roadside is typically done by highways. They're saying that they are not going to be using pesticides or herbicides from January 2023. So what Nan was talking about at the time is no longer going to be effective. They're not going to be using it. Now, the alternative, there are alternative methods, and Highways and indeed West Suffolk are trying to find which is the best method in which circumstance. There are additional costs, and some of those additional costs are probably going to result in manual labour in terms of manual cutting. And of course, weeds can grow back. And I think this is what is going to be really interesting in debate at West Suffolk Council, is it's going to be more expensive not using glyphosate. But then you've got this ethical dimension that I really want to explore. Just because it's more expensive, does that mean that we don't, that we just keep on using something that is potentially harmless? And there is increasing evidence that it is harmful, sorry. And I think the other aspect is we're going to have an education programme, and officers at West Suffolk are talking about having information that will be given to councillors, because there will be communications. Weeds are going to grow back, so there are going to be additional costs with additional cutting or manual methods or hot foam or industrial strength vinegar, essentially acetic acid. So although those do work, they're not as good as glyphosate, and the weeds are likely to grow back. And we're going to have to probably shift our expectations in terms of what we expect, in terms of what we're choosing to live. But also, are we okay with that if we know we're not doing harm? And as I say, I think there's an ethical dimension to this debate beyond just making sure that we don't like seeing weeds in our streets, and of course we don't like seeing weeds in our streets. And I think that is where the arguments are going to divide. Thank you.
Yeah, Laura.
Yeah, sorry about that noise when I didn't mute myself and I was moving everybody. Yeah, sorry. So my response to that, Joe, would be I absolutely am fine with seeing more weeds. I think a lot of the time weeds are actually flowers that bees really like. I mean, dandelions, I don't mind seeing dandelions on the pavements because dandelions are excellent for bees. You know, it's not, so from my personal perspective, I say bring on all the weeds. But you did raise something that would be very concerning, which I'm sure sort of Colin and Gary can tell us about if the town council, I would 100% believe that our town council are not using any of those things, but I would like to know if we are, and that would make me quite shocked and appalled. So hopefully not.
Yeah, thanks.
Did you want me to answer that question now?
I was
Yes,
yeah, if you can, Colin, this time.
Yeah, it's very straightforward. No, we don't do any weed spraying of any sort whatsoever. The regime around spraying in the public realm is extremely complicated. Every time it's used, you have to record the exact dosages, exactly where it was sprayed, etc. I do believe that Kevin, our parish handyman, has actually got the qualification necessary. There's actually an exam you have to do in order to spray in the public realm. But no, we've never done it in all the years that I've worked for the council, and we don't have any intention of starting.
Thanks for that, Colin. Joe, is that a residual hand, or would you like to speak?
So, sorry, Chair. Actually, it is, but there is just one other thing that I wanted to add. Without doubt, the public are going to be will be asking questions of us, and it is part of the role of West Suffolk, and this motion brings it up. And I think the officers are agreeable to it, but there will have to be an educational process in terms of explaining why there is a change of regime. I think also West Suffolk are also seeking whether it is such a possibility to have community champions that can help, community groups that might be able to get involved. There is going to be a change of regimen. but the alternative is to use a chemical that is harmful. And I think, as I keep coming back to, there isn't an easy answer. And it isn't necessarily going to be a popular answer, banning glyphosate. It can be bought commonly off a shelf on it's called Roundup. It's you can buy it from B&Q. But you see, I also think this is a really positive step, because by communicating this to people perhaps within their own gardens will stop using Roundup, because of course glyphosate isn't just used on highways, it's used in people's gardens. And I think raising the profile of the damages that glyphosate causes within the community more generally could also reduce the use of it within people's gardens. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Okie doke.
Chair,
yeah.
Just to say that to councillors, I have circulated a email from Joe Rayner, the portfolio holder, with a announcement on the use of glyphosate.
Thanks for that, Colin. Okay, while we're on actions, I just wondered if there was any update on the helping residents to save energy item that we discussed previously, Colin. Is there any progress at all on that?
Well, the progress has been slow, but the place that we wanted to host in the High Street, the Link, long drawn out discussions between the Salvation Army and the landlords in terms of the license arrangement for them. But that is opening in January, and our volunteer centre's moving across to it, and that's the venue that we intended putting advisors in, and the funding still sits there.
Yeah, that'd be something else that'd be really good to sort of move forward, as you know, obviously with the weather, etc., etc. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, thanks for that, Colin. Okay, item six, which is the public forum. I don't think we've got any members of the public, no, so we'll skip that one. Agenda item 7, ideas for the next meeting from members of the committee, please. Any items, Laura?
Yeah, just remembering to unmute myself. Just the Salix grants that keep coming up in rounds, and I had mentioned in a previous meeting to Colin, I don't think Gary was present in that meeting, that Miles had sort of made some recommendations regarding possibly us signing what's called an access agreement with Miles's company, which doesn't cost anything, but it involves, it's like the first step of kind of then finding out sort of what it might cost for them to help us with, you know, these energy projects going forward. And it was something that I think Colin had said that he was going to try and arrange a meeting with Miles, and I just wondered if anything had come from that and if that could maybe be done sort of by next meeting, so we had some more news on that.
Yeah, we haven't succeeded in arranging a meeting, but yeah, I'll bring that back to the top of the inbox.
Great, thanks.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. To be fair, I think it'd be a good idea at the next meeting just to have a quick run through of all the different things that we've talked about over the last months, and just to see where we are with them, just as an update, just go through the list and see where we are. We've done some good stuff, and it'd be nice just to know how, as a reminder to everyone, how it's all going. Yeah, Joe?
Just really quickly, is it possible that the committee would be agreeable for me to come and join the committee, this working party, more formally? What would I need to do to do that? And secondly, I'm really keen to try and help push the Bee Friendly project forward. And if we're talking about next meeting, Laura mentioned it earlier, that it's very easy to get slippage, and I mean, obviously there's elections next year, so none of us may be here beyond May anyway. But it would be certainly nice to see if we could get some next steps and some decisions or commitments made that could be discussed at the next meeting. Thank you.
Personally, you're more than welcome, Joe, but I think, Colin, have you, do we have to...
I'll put something on the full council agenda to increase the terms of reference to allow Councillor Mason to join. There's no issue at all.
Thank you. Yeah, brilliant. But Laura?
Yeah, just I'd be really happy for you to join, Joe. I have been talking about flowers and bees and stuff for years, and I really appreciate how you've kind of pushed this forward in a way that I never really managed to. So yeah, I think that would be great, and I would love you to kind of, you know, keep pushing it, and hopefully we can get some stuff. I don't know how many more meetings we can get in before the election, but if we could get in as many as possible, because as Joe said, we might not all be here, and certainly I hope to be here, but if not, then yeah, I want to get as much positive stuff done as I can before we get kicked out.
Yeah, I'll totally agree with that. That brings us nicely on to the next item on the agenda, which is date of the next meeting. So provisionally at the moment it's Tuesday the 7th of February. The members happy with that? Colin, we seem to have a lot of stuff to do. Is there any chance of bringing it forward? I mean, to be fair, it's only going to be just over a month anyway, isn't it?
Well, we've got the Christmas break, and then there's quite a series of meetings already, so I'm not sure there's space in the diary. Certainly for an evening meeting, these meetings aren't necessarily always in the evening.
Yeah.
But I think in terms of us getting a chance to make some meaningful progress and report back, there's a risk otherwise we just end up with just reporting we haven't got around to doing something because the meetings are too close together.
Yeah, totally understand that. Yeah, so provisionally then, could we say that, okay, we've got the 7th of February, but potentially look to get something in March before, obviously, because when it enters the period of purdah, I don't think we can have any more meetings. Is that right, Colin, if I remember rightly?
No, you can have meetings. What you can't do is have anything kind of that big public announcements, so any policy announcements, and also anything that would draw attention or highlight the activities of any particular member of the committee that may be standing for election. But you can certainly have meetings.
Okay. So could we look to get something in March as well? Something, yeah. I think that would be good, because we've got quite a full sort of spread of stuff that we're hoping to do, and I think a couple of meetings, you know, reasonably close together would sort of hopefully show that we're pushing forward with it. Yeah. Obviously not to interfere with anything else, but if we can, we can. Yeah. Okay, so is everyone okay with the 7th of February at the moment? Yeah. Brilliant. So we'll go for that. And that brings the meeting to a close. Thanks, Colin,